reactions continue to trail the recent moves by the Buhari-led government to crack down on agitations for secession in the southeast and southwestern parts of the country. Now, Nnamdi Kanu, leader of the Southeast Secessionist group, the Indigenous People of Biafra IPOB, was rearrested from an undisclosed country to continue his trial in the country after jumping bail in 2017. While Yoruba Nation agitator Sunday Adeyemo, aka Sunday Igboho's residence, was raided by the Department of State Security recently. And now, what does this move by the federal government mean for the state and security of Nigeria? Joining us now to speak on this is Liborous Oshoma, an activist and, of course, a lawyer. It's good to have you, as always, Liborous.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right, so let's just start.
Congratulations.
All right, so
and good to have you.
Yeah, what does the law say on acts of secession? Are there consequences here?
Yes, there are consequences. It's a treasonable felony to want to forcefully secede from Nigeria, because looking at the entire gamut of the Nigerian 1999 Constitution as amended, there's no provision for secession, there's no provision for a referendum. I think it was intentional. And so I had always advocated that anybody that is discussing self-determination without anybody that is proposing self-determination without discussing it would be setting himself on a safe path of destruction. And so for me, the way a manner government is going about it also, it's not also democratic and not also civilized in our society, considering the fact that there are procedures for arrests. There are procedures, according to the provisions of the Administration of Criminal Justice Act, there are procedures for even declaring somebody wanted. And so to that extent, two wrongs does not make a right. But as for extradition, looking at the position of the law and the Extradition Act and the pact signed by Nigerian government and let's assume now Kenyan government, all the procedures that have been followed to extradite Nnamdi Kanu are all on force with the provisions of the law. But the way the government is going about arresting, people who are proposing self-determination, runs foul of the law, even though, like I said, it is an offense. Mm.
But the Kenyan government has denied, being complicit in the whole thing. But I mean, let's leave that. I'm interested in the position of the law and jurisprudence, and looking at the broader background to what leads to this sort of agitation. And two of the principal players that we have now, Kanu and Sunday Igboho, seem to me to have something that like a template. We've seen this before. We've seen this to an extent in Masob. We have seen this to an extent
in OPC.
In OPC, Gani Adams, who is now the generalissimo of the Yoruba, at a point had to turn himself in when he was declared wanted by Okiro, the former commissioner of police. Why is all this headed?
Yeah, your question is a Hydra-headed one. Let me take the first one. On the extradition, even though the Ghanaian government had denied, the Kenyan government had denied involvement, but from the statement credited to the lawyers of Nnamdi Kanu, he reportedly told them that he was arrested and detained by the Kenyan authority for 8 days. So that means they were involved. Right. What are the legal provisions for this? First and foremost, an arrest is usually made either at the airport or at the country of residence. It's immaterial now, let's be very clear. It's immaterial, the passports that you are traveling with. What is material is that there's a complaint filed before the authority, the appropriate security authority of that country. If you remember, Ibori, Chief Onanefe Ibori was extradited from Dubai to the UK, even though he was carrying a Nigerian passport. He ought to have been extradited to Nigeria. And that's said, It's immaterial the passport you are carrying. And then also, mind you, Nnamdi Kanu probably would have, Nnamdi Kanu deposited his Nigerian passport and the British passport with the Nigerian government when he was granted bail, before his bail was frustrated by the Nigerian government. And so, on that note, it also might be, this is my conclusion though, that it also might be at complaint, the Nigerian government also would have taken his passports to the Kenyan authority to report that, look, this man is a Nigerian citizen and there are allegations of crime against him and he's facing trial, which is a notorious fact, universally established. Then secondly, it is not in Kenya, a court does not need, unlike in the UK, a court, you don't need a court to decide whether to extradite that person or not. The immigration officer, as the case may be, can conduct the hearing. So that's the difference. In the UK, it must be an extradition court. But in Kenya, an immigration officer can hear argument for and against and take a decision thereafter. So that's the difference between that of Kenya and Nigeria. And then coming to the other issues. You see, society develops when government is fair, transparent, communicates. Communication is very key here. And then there's justice and equity. There are underlying issues that consistently has bedeviled the Nigerian society, which gave rise to all of these agitations. In pre-1999, we had the MASOB. MASOB came up, and what were these same agitations? We want an independent state of Biafra. And the way the government, nobody knew of MASOB until Obasanjo arrested Uwazurike. And Obasanjo realized that arresting him was ordinarily making him popular. And then I think they had a deal and it was let go. And that gradually, MASOB died a gradual death. And secondly, OPC came in 2004 and he was arrested also after turning himself in. And the Nigerian state also realized that the call, or what is giving these guys fang, was the inequality and injustice that is prevailing in the society. And so what do? You address those issues. You address the imbalance, you address the inequality, you address the fairness complaint about, and then you communicate effectively. Communication is very key. But when you're seen to pander towards a section of the country, and then when the crime is coming from the other section of the country, they're bound to be complained. People are bound to say, we don't have a stake in this. But then what can the people do, or what should they have done differently? That's where Nnamdi Kanu, it is very difficult for people now to speak for him and say, this man, I have seen no crime he has committed. Because when understanding the law is very key, you need to understand that since there is no room for a self-determination and referendum in your constitution, what do? You either, through mass mobilization and voters' awareness, vote in people to the National Assembly that will amend the constitution to have those provisions in the constitution, and then you can subsequently now trigger those sections to actualize your vision. It should be an intellectual debate. Don Pedro Obaseki is also on the same course, but it takes his discussion intellectually. You will never see him resort to brute force or ask people to go and kill. And so that should have been the level that all of this discussion should have been in. And that's why people now find it difficult to say, okay, is it right? Is it wrong? You can't rule away the fact that offenses have been committed. And then coming to Sunday Igboho, the states, the Chief of Defense Staff asked people to go defend themselves. After all, in his statement, how many rounds of bullet do these bandits have? So defend yourself against them, don't run away. And when you make such statement, when a state makes such statement, what you are indirectly telling the people is that you don't have the capacity to protect them. They should protect themselves. And such statement will naturally give rise to the likes of Sunday Igboho, who are also coupled with the fact that when there are complaints against these bandits, you either tell them, live peacefully with them, or don't worry, we are doing something, when people are dying in droves. And so what the people would naturally do would be to take up arms, to protect themselves, or in some cases, you have the rise of people like Sunday Igboho, who will come as a Superman to protect others. And I also think, that's why I said I blame the state in the path that they are following. They will ordinarily, create hero out of people who you should have relegated. What the state should have done would have been, okay, what are the problems? Let us address them. If it takes you, if you have studied, if you've been following, watching Nnamdi Kanu for 2 years, and then you are able to bring him, use your Interpol connection to bring him to Nigeria. Like everybody has said, ordinarily would have all be on the street jubilating if the same efforts, if the same tactics had been deployed by the government to tackle the insecurity, that is consistently ravaging Nigeria as we speak. Now to even travel between here and Benin, you need the blood of Jesus. So that's why you see all of this. So there's been argument for and against. So the government can really quell all of this if they do the right thing. And I expect them, to wake up. This should be a wake-up call for them to say, you know what, we're going to treat everybody, using the same whip. Not you are negotiating with some bandits and asking them to voluntarily lay down their arms, or you have a Sheikh Gumi who, to the knowledge of the DSS, according to him, went into the forest to meet with the bandits and then, discuss with them. He comes and speaks on their behalf. What that means is that the government knows where the bandits are. So if you now know where Sunday Igboho is without an invitation, you've invaded his house. You also don't need to invite the bandits or go to them to beg them to lay their arms. That's why you see there seems to be, this unsettlement from Nigerians that, look, this action is not altruistic.
All right, Liborous, Oshoma, I'd like you to hold your thoughts on these issues. We're going to come back to you. You're still watching The Morning Show. We'll be right back after this break. Stay with us. Good to have you back on The Morning Show. And earlier on, we were speaking with Liborous Oshoma, an activist and, of course, a lawyer, to give his perspective on the clampdown on secessionists and, of course, his legal perspective on issues regarding that. Now, if we were to approach this scenario on national security and the need to preserve one entity called Nigeria, will the government be justified on this rate, you think? And earlier on, we also talked about how there was a need, you alluded to that, for the government to be, tactical in its engagement with scenarios such as this.
Yes, there are two issues here. One, you have the factual angle. Secondly is the law angle. In all honesty, can we say these two persons have not, there are no allegations of crime against them? There are, certainly. And I start with Nnamdi Kanu. I talked about effective communication. The way he's been able to communicate his message to the discerning had been very, very, very violent and not fit for civil society. You can say that the government had also used the same tactics, but you knowing fully well that you are not government and you want to achieve something that would that you need the government to do. And quickly, let me also bring in the United Nations. What people also don't understand is the fact that United Nations can never force a sovereign country to hold a referendum for injustice, alleged injustice that are said to be committed within the territory of that country. United Nations will lean towards the constitutional provisions of that country. No United Nations will force you to hold a referendum. In the UK, referendum was held because it is contained in their laws.
That's right.
You can't go to United Nations and ask them to come force Nigeria to hold a referendum for an independent state of Biafra. They will ask you to go to your representative because Nigeria is a sovereign nation and Nigeria is recognized by the United Nations and ECOWAS and so many other international bodies. So if you must, so this angle of, yes, United Nations would do this or United Nations would do that. No, there are countries that have declared themselves independent for 45 years. Till date, nobody is having any relationship with them. Their citizens still travels on passports of other countries. So that's why I believe that the discussion should have been intellectual. And so now bringing it to the point I raised, engagement by Nnamdi Kanu had been very, very violent. I listened to some of the videos on the declaration of sit at home. Yes, we all want to celebrate the dead, but asking people who refuse to abide by your command that they will be killed in their shop, these are people you want to protect.
So
that they will be
human
killed.
Rights infringements there.
Yes, they are infringement also. So to that extent, you can't say there are no allegations of crime against them. And so, but that will be handled strictly within the confines of the courtroom. And that's why, like I said here the last time, I have faith in the judge handling the matter. So, but justice should not only be done, like we say, should be manifestly seen to have been done. And that's where the Nigerian government comes in. They should ensure that as much as they can to make sure that justice is manifestly seen to be done in this case. Not what Lahi Mohammed thinks or what the president thinks. Now, all you need to do is to collate your proof of evidence and then submit them to the prosecution. The same thing for Sunday Igboho's case. If you feel that crimes have been committed by him, you gather your evidence. But one big problem that they are going to have, the way and manner this evidence we also gathered would be subject to interrogation by the courts. Because you don't just gather evidence any way you like. There are procedures also for gathering evidence. And then you put them before the court to be dealt with. Then coming to the issue of factual instances like I raised before, to answer your question, what should the Nigerian government do? The Nigerian government should treat everybody fairly and equally. Even though it's a tall task, an uphill task. I read the interview credited to the governor of Kaduna State, Malam Nasru El-Rufai, saying that IPOB is different from bandits. And because IPOB has a known leader, the bandits don't have a known leader. I would really, with all sense of humility and with due respect to him, disagree completely. I don't expect such a statement from somebody high up there and somebody as intellectual as El-Rufai. Because we're not talking about, one is agitation for self-determination, even though they have gone about it the wrong way. The others are killers. Killers who are carrying guns. We see them. And then you sit down with them. In some cases, you see Masari, doing photo ops with killers who are renouncing, and they're carrying AK-47. These are people who have come out to say that they have killed, they have deprived people from going to their farmland. And the moment you grant them amnesty, you should also be ready to grant others amnesty, irrespective of what, because no crime, even the crime of life, is bigger than the others. So, if you say one, his action led to the death, indirectly, death of 40 or 60 people, and the other one had killed just one person, they are all criminals. And so what the government should do to give a sense of belonging to everybody in the entity called Nigeria, so that people will truly and genuinely say, yes, we want to live together, because whether we like it or not, we are not going anywhere. We are all together in this, we are all together in this. But the government can do a lot to ensure that we all see ourselves as one. And the first thing is sense of belonging. The other one is fairness and justice, like I always say. You don't see a man who is carrying AK-47 because there's this belief that he's from your lineage or from your ethnic tribe. And then you say, no, live with them peacefully. And when crime is reported, deal with it the way you would deal with all crime. Investigate it, and if these people are culpable, arrest them, prosecute them. Yes, I also will not sit down here to say the government had not been prosecuting some bandits that have been arrested or some members of Boko Haram. But a situation where there even a proposed bill from the National Assembly rehabilitating some of them and even sending them to school abroad, the picture you paint is that, look, it is good to carry arms against the state, and once you do that, the state will rehabilitate you. We saw what happened with the Niger Delta militant. When they started, I remember Ankyo Briggs saying that, look, you are moving on the wrong footing, because what you are telling those that have the capacity to carry arms and are not yet carrying arms is that it pays to carry arms. And then immediately after that, we saw the Boko Haram, and then you saw banditry. Even the former PDP chairman of APC, what's this man from Kwara State name now? Baraje, Kau Baraje, came out publicly, admitted that these people were hired by them, brought in by them to cause mayhem in the event that they do not win the election. Nobody has arrested him. Nobody has prosecuted him for such statement or debunked that statement. We also saw, like, it's a notorious fact, you see Sheikh Gumi saying, no, IPOB are terrorists, or IPOB are terrorists, but the bandits are good people. They are hungry. That's why they kidnap for money. They don't kill. Kidnapping, as far as I can still remember, is an offense in our criminal law books. So a man kidnaps. Even in Kaduna State, the governor has said he will no longer pay ransom. But how well have you been able to protect the people in Gona and Rogo and South Kaduna to ensure that they are not killed? Apart from even protecting them, how many of them, of those killers, are you prosecuting? So it is when you begin to do that, that you give everybody a sense of justice. Now coming to the West, those bandits, or call them headsmen, that have deprived people from going to their farmland, how many of them also have you arrested? Why the back and forth with between the Attorney General and the governor of Ondo State, who also is a senior advocate, when the man said those people, the killer headsmen, should leave their forest? Why did the Attorney General suddenly jump to defend these people? To say, no, you can't do that. You can't deny people from Nigerians' freedom of movement. When also you're talking about, he now said you're comparing spare part dealers with killers. So when you make statements such as that, the impression you give is that you are protecting some persons irrespective of the crime that you commit. And that, like Nnamdi Azikiwe says, when two incompatible mates, they can coexist if only they agree to agree and agree to disagree. And the only way you can agree to agree and agree to disagree is to sit down and discuss. And that's why those people, the educated ones, are calling for a restructuring. So we need to restructure the entity called Nigeria so that it will be from bottom to top and not from top to bottom. The president, who campaigned with this vigorously, says, I do not understand what you mean by restructuring. And those calling for restructuring wants to divide Nigeria. That's not it. So all of the, as much as the government would move 10 steps forward, they, by their own actions and inactions, will move 20 steps backward. So that's what is creating the confusion. If only they can listen, if only the Attorney General can be more engaging. You saw what happened with Amotekun. The Amotekun issue was almost becoming a north and south thing. We won't allow you, we'll allow you. And that's where also I blame Sunday Igboho. If you feel threatened or you feel that you are not a Superman, you are not a police, you can liaise with the Western security, recognized security apparatus to ensure that if you have information, volunteer it to them who are working with the police to ensure that this, whoever has committed any crime is flushed out, and let the government now not do anything. And you can take it up from there by ensuring that these things are transparently shown. But when you take up arms to say you want to protect your people because government has failed you, that same government that fails you will not look at the people you are protecting, you're trying to protect your people against, but will rather look at that action that you have done, which run contrary to the provisions of the law.
All right, Liborous, let's take another break, but we'll be right back with thoughts from you on that issue. Are you still watching Morning Show? We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to the Morning Show. We're still with Liborous Oshoma, speaking on the situation in the country as regards the Nnamdi Kanu and the Sunday Igboho as far as security is concerned. I like the thoughts that you have expressed, especially on how intellectualism should drive this agitation. And the reference that you made regarding the UK, I recall in 2014 that yes, I mean, referendum is in their constitution. In 2014, Scotland actually wanted to leave the UK.
Yes.
And it was put to referendum. Guess what? They lost.
Yes, yes.
So sometimes when all these agitators, as you said, we're probably stuck together for a while. What I'm saying is, road shows and popular agitations alone don't necessarily determine that your cause is popular. You can have a referendum tomorrow or next year and you lose. But like you said, drive it with intellectualism. Why do you think they're running away from it? Is it about what I'll call conflict entrepreneurship? Are they profiteering from the conflict, that they're using? That looks like agitation, but
That's just it. You find out that every Nigerian would want to benefit from the quagmire that we're finding ourselves as in Nigeria. That's why you find some persons who will sit on this seat like me, become an advocate for, a better society. The moment the call is extended to them to come serve in government, they forget all they have agitated for.
They say the exact opposite.
They sit opposite and then tell you won't understand. And that's why you also find some persons who had been advocate of restructuring, and then they get into government, they suddenly jettison the restructuring, but they benefit from it. And that's why also you will find people who will they latch on to, the lacunas, the deficiency in the society. Ordinarily, you ask yourself, where were these plenty agitation in the last administration? A lot of people from the Eastern extractions were part of the government. We didn't call on any of them to come, make life better or include referendum in our constitution to ensure that in the event that we are unfairly treated. But Buhari campaigned vigorously with a better Nigeria and got there and forgot that, he made those promises. He said they were his party promises. And that said, the injustice, started rearing its ugly head, starting from the 97% to 5% imbalance, all-inclusive government. And then people saw a loophole in the system. And then people, there will never be an end to better life.
That's right.
And so those people that wanted a better country, there must be a voice. And so when you stand up as a voice for them, they are ready to pay for it. And that's where these people, they saw that loophole and said, okay, we can. Otherwise, when you see the life that Tai Solari lived, an austere life, compared to the lives of the agitations that we have today, right. And then compared to the threats on the same people that disagree, so that's why I think all of this discussion would have been elevated to an intellectual level and will achieve. I read a book by Senator Oyinaya Abaribe, Made in Aba, and he campaigned for a Biafra of the mind. Oh. And do you know that some of these young people started calling him names for that he's been bought over by the Fulanis for daring to campaign for a Biafra of the mind. And he said, look at the bigger picture of what you have invested. Yes, we have not been fairly treated. We can ask for a fair treatment, but the call for restructuring had not been this loud the way it is now. So if we consistently, set a template and call for it, we will, get there. I also listened to a seminar delivered by Professor Soludo, which he said, look, we're discussing Biafra. Well, we don't even have a template. Where will the headquarters be? Who will be the leaders? What system of government? Yeah. The people you want to include in Biafra, the Niger Delta, have you discussed with them to know whether, because a lot of them have said, we don't want to be. And,
who drew the map?
Who drew the map?
Of Biafra.
So all of these are the template we need to set to make the discussion a more robust one. And if it must be a referendum, it shouldn't be for the Igbo extractions alone. It must be the entire country. The call it's, louder now. And then coming to the West, Sunday Igbo, yes, you're trying to protect your people who are being killed daily by bandits and headsmen. What has Lagos Rally got to do with that protection?
With the people with the gun.
Yeah. So when considering against the backdrop of what had happened in Lagos with the NSAS movement, would you still want to? We're not talking about a peaceful protest now. Even the peaceful protest that was mooted with June 12th, you saw how the state resisted it. Why do you still want to confront the state headlong when you do not have the same capacity that they have? I think sense would have, common sense would have been allowed to determine, all of this. It is good when you see that you have a state that is opposed to opposition, the voices of dissent voices. Yeah. What you do, you elevate the discussions above them. Because now you find out that in Nigeria, nobody in government dare reasons above the president. If the president's reasoning is shallow, his supporters, his government appointees' reasoning should also, not go beyond that. So what do you now do? You see, anytime Alhaji Lai Mohammed, as cerebral as he used to be, anytime he opens his mouth, I just wonder, is this the same Alhaji that we used to respect? You see Femi Adesina, you see Garba Shehu, these are cerebral people. But their discussion now is not elevated beyond the reasoning of the president. So what do? You take it beyond them. Make the discussion more robust and, all-encompassing. And people will be able to chew on it and see reasons with you. But when you want to be pedestrian, there is no blueprint, there's no roadmap. All you just do is, you want to shout, you want to protest, knowing fully where people were killed during the NSAS protest. Till date, we are still asking, where are the bodies, where are show evidence? So I think that organizers of this nature should have retreated and asked themselves some salient questions and say, look, with what had happened, I don't think, confronting Lagos now would be a good idea. If these people read books at all, the Biafran, the Civil War, when the Biafran government took over the Southeast, some persons in books we have read, including that of Alabi Sama, The Tragedy of Victory, faulted their strategy for even attempting to march towards Lagos. So if you read those books, you will understand and ask yourself, now we want to defend people in Igbo, in Igono, in Ibadan and the rest. Why do we want to march on the street of Lagos, at this volatile time?
All right, Liborous, if I may come in. We've been reflecting more on the principal actors here and, of course, the agitators. But do you think there's enough public support for this act of secession, generally, irrespective of geo-ethnic considerations here?
I can't say if there is enough until you put it to test through a public vote. But what I can tell you is that there is enough sentiment that the entity or the structure called Nigeria is defective, including those in government. They've expressed those sentiments while outside of government, including those who are outside now who were in government. They are expressing the same sentiment now. So that sentiment is enough to go around that the structure called Nigeria is defective. Whether there is enough public sentiment to want to go their separate ways. I've heard those views, but you also hear some of these people saying we will opt for a restructuring first before opting to exit the country because we've intermarried, we have, we've exchanged ideas. There is nobody in Nigeria today that would say that all his relations, all his friends are within his local enclave. We built structures across borders. Indeed. And to that extent, people, if you're able to convince them, people will naturally, want a restructured Nigeria where, everybody would be able to take care of their insecurity is local. I don't see any reason why you cannot deal with it locally first. Even the president in his address agreed that insecurity is local. But one thing he failed to admit, or one thing his advisors did not point out to him, is that going by the provisions of the Constitution, you are the chief of army staff. So you should deal with insecurity, or you amend the Constitution to devolve powers to the local government and the state so that they can deal with insecurity squarely. He said that those days that, when there is security, the locals will come in first, even the local chiefs will meet, and then the governors will deal with it. But now, the Constitution does not empower the governors to so do. Even in some instances where a commissioner of police, you've been in government, you understand what I'm talking about, where a commissioner of police, is answerable to a governor, he can still, by virtue of section 215, subsection 4, he would still ask the governor to request permission from the IG. That's the provision of the law. So
that's correct. Sorry, Liborous, to cut you short, but I just want to bring this in. I mean, the southern governors are meeting on Monday in Lagos, which will be the second meeting they will have this year after the one in Delta. Two principal players from the south are now, in the eye of the storm. One has been arrested, one on the run. What should be the thoughts of the governors, being the elected officers of the states where people are agitating? Because, I mean, things have to be done. The right words have to be said so that people don't take you know, the law into their hands. What should be their main concerns as far as these two issues are concerned?
First and foremost, please permit me to say this, that I do not know why the meeting of the Southern governors in that first meeting will send shivers down the spine of Northern leaders. The Northern leaders have been meeting on how to ensure that, you know, they have, you know, one voice, they speak with one voice. So the fact that you raise alarm or you're opposed to the meeting of the Southern governors also will send wrong signals to the other part of the country that because one of yours is the president, you don't want others to be united. And I also would encourage such meetings. And the meetings should not be based on sentiments. Or I like the fact that it's across political divide. And now coming to the question you asked, there are laws of the land. And I have also heard most of the governors express the same views. Nobody can take away the fact that there are infractions, you know, against the provisions of the law. But let the law be manifestly seen to be done in as far as these people are concerned. And then let the government also use the same vigor, the same intelligence, the same apparatus to protect the length and breadth of not just the southern part of the country, but the entire country. Once you do that, it becomes easy for us to convince our people that, look, the government means well. We can't just sit down, fold our hands. You've asked us to protect our people. Yeah. We don't have the capacity to. Even when we form a Moteku or a Bubeagu, they are only baton-carrying people. And in some cases, pump action, compared to a man who is carrying AK-47 or GPMG. So, when this thing happens, there needs to be synergy and collaboration from the commander-in-chief so that we can, when we see fairness being displayed by everybody, by the government at the center, and then we can say truly, in a march towards a restructured Nigeria, government is trying to balance everything. That should be, for me, the agenda. That will calm nerves. When anybody comes to Lagos and say they want to protest, people will say, yes, we have seen what government is doing, so we don't think a protest would you know,
it's
what is needed now. But when government is not doing anything, and people feel that whether they protest, they will die, and if they don't protest, they will die, they would rather take that option of going out to protest and die than sit down and wait to die by installments.
Indeed, interesting perspective. We've been speaking with Liborous Oshoma, a legal practitioner and, of course, an activist, on the clampdown on secessionists and other scenarios in that regard. We'd like to thank you for your thoughts on those. Good to have you, as always.
My pleasure, always.